Turnaround stories are well-known companies with strong brands and diverse operations which have often been lucrative investment opportunities for investors. But the corporate landscape is also littered with turnaround stories that didn't go according to plan. Now, distinguishing between a good turnaround and a bad one is a dark art that often hinges on the skill of the executive taking the helm. Rowan Williams joins us in studio to navigate us through the opportunities of 4 potential turnaround stories. What are we going to start with here? Can we start with Telkom?
Yeah, you've been itching, Bronwyn.
I've been itching to start with the Telkom turnaround story. Right, so we've gone, if I remember, share price at one stage 122 Rand. We're at 14 Rand, right?
Yes.
There and thereabouts. So this is the big turnaround story of the decade if it comes to fruition.
Potentially, yes. I guess so. You must remember, Telkom unbundled Vodacom, the half of Vodacom that it owned at some point. So that also resulted in,
you need to take a base effect.
But still, it's been a terrible underperformer. I think in an environment where you've seen the mobile stocks do well to very well in the case of Vodacom. So it's a very difficult situation. Obviously, you probably could say it's got a number of ingredients for underperformance. Obviously, we won't say government control, but a significant government influence in the form of a large shareholding and involvement in the board, and then a lot of management difficulties. Which has created, I think, a lot of management confusion in execution. That's expressed by the ATA rollout, where they've now rebranded to Telkom Mobile, entering an incredibly competitive space that already has fairly high saturation and very strong players in forms of the incumbents. I mean, even the third player, Cell C, is struggling to penetrate. So where does that leave a fourth player? And very capital intensive, and management making a number of bad decisions. If we remember back the investments in Nigeria, how much, I think it was over 8 billion Rand that was lost basically. So poor
severe capital misallocation across the board.
Rowan, obviously the big thing is they still have a near monopoly on landline telecoms. So why the decline? Has their franchise been eaten by the likes of MTN and Vodacom in that space? And I think then we can then turn the page and look at the management that have now been installed,
right? Yes,
and see how you sort of rate their chances. But at the moment, how did they get the monopoly wrong? This should be a cash cow.
Yeah, so I guess it should be, but it needed to be managed as such, and I don't think that was necessarily the mindset. They've also got quite a large incumbent labour force that is unionised. So and it's globally, fixed line has been in decline, volumes are in decline, and prices are in decline. So you would need to manage the cost base very aggressively. They don't really have the flexibility to do that, just in terms of the context of South Africa, but the government influence on top of that made it quite difficult, I think, to manage specifically the staff costs, to manage that, to maintain margins and to maintain cash flows out of the mature business. So that business has been in decline. I think it was masked somewhat before by Vodacom's inclusion in the results. But when that was stripped out, it was much more apparent. And then obviously the big opportunity or growth opportunity has been broadband, but that's been poorly executed. Again, the rollout's been slow. I think the pricing hasn't been nearly aggressive. And hence the take-up hasn't been what it should have been, and that should have taken over some of the fall-off in the fixed line revenue, which hasn't really occurred. There was an opportunity in mobile, but it's been taken up by the other players, so they were a bit too late to the party there. So they're actually being squeezed out, I guess, in a very mature sector. And you would, I think, given the very challenging business environment and circumstances, you need a very talented management team, which they had just
is that
a
what
revolving
it hinges
door
on for you? This turnaround story is about finding the right people to captain the ship.
Yeah. So I think it's also important, if you look at, and you mentioned some of the other names where there has been success, I think the environment in which they're operating also has to be conducive, and then you have to have a management team that can take advantage of those opportunities. And also turnaround is often, the core may be good, but a lot of peripheral stuff has been done badly, or they're non-core operations, but the core operations basically have been crowded out by those poor decisions. And if the core ingredients are still good, then you've got the recipe for a good turnaround. But if you don't necessarily, if it's the absolute, the core of the thing isn't good, then it's unlikely to result in a massive turnaround. It always depends from what point you start and what the valuation is. But it's difficult if you don't have something to work with.
So at this point, are you interested? Are you interested in
sure.
Telkom?
No, look, we place a high regard on management and their ability to execute, and until we see some level of delivery, I don't think we're going to be interested, because I think you're just seeing the business sort of doing better, crowding out management. That's the business conditions are really what comes to the fore, as opposed to the management team in very difficult situations. And unless it was a highly skilled management team, I think they'd been working together with a lot of experience in telcos. We still very.
I've been asking this question
nervous.
repeatedly at the moment. What about those poor shareholders who are currently holding Telkom and are about to tear their hair out? What should they do with the stock at 15 Rand?
Sure. So it appears that the asset base is a significant multiples, and especially the current market value of the asset base relative to the share price. So it's kind of a value trap, because it looks like there's value there. But it's been constantly eroded as the market opportunities eroded in fixed line, and I guess mobile broadband, taking a big chunk of the potential broadband market as well. It's quite difficult to value. I think their best chance is some form of investment or takeover.
Or a partner, or
that's
or
right,
something.
yeah. Which obviously there was the South Koreans, Telecoms,
Yeah.
but. You're seeing even that having, maybe, difficulties in terms of government's involvement in terms of making a decision. So I think you sort of, they're just frozen in.
Well, let's look for other opportunities, because Telkom's a no-go area right now.
I wouldn't.
So
I'd stay away still.
Telkom's out.
go?
Telkom's out
Yes.
for Rowan. Let's get to Times Media Group. We've
Okay.
got a few minutes left. We want
Yes.
to get to two
Okay,
companies:
yeah.
Times Media
Yeah.
and Gajima.
So
Times
okay.
Media, Andy
Yeah.
Bonhamore's taken
Yes.
over.
No, so they're much better and a much more interesting proposition and opportunity, where they've gone and geared the business or the underlying operations, and so they are still very cash generative. The newspaper business very attractive. I don't think there's massive growth there, and obviously some of the other media assets not a lot of growth. But what I was alluding to earlier in terms of the core being good. I mean, they're very strong newspaper titles with very strong franchises.
We're talking Sunday Times.
Exactly, Financial
Business Day.
Mail. That's right. Yeah. So strong, and they are starting to migrate to digital media, obviously, which is important for the longevity. But saying that is going according to plan. They are selling off a lot of the non-core, what I was speaking about earlier. So the sort of core is actually quite attractive, and then realizing non-core, even exclusive books, which they're saying is non-core to their media business and some of the other book titles and book publishers. So, and then taking that capital, obviously paying down the debt, and then focusing on the execution of those core businesses. So given
So
the
you're
gearing,
excited about this potential turnaround?
Yes, and you also look, there's been a lot of management buying. There was a bit of changes in management where it was a bit disappointing that the management of Hurt and Carter didn't take over. But having said that, I think Andrew Bonhamore's fairly experienced now and has quite a good track record. So there you're kind of ticking a lot more of the boxes, and that looks like it has a lot more potential. Industry not great, it's a bit of a sunset industry, print media, but I think they're looking to milk it as much as they can and extract the cash flows.
I don't know where the time has gone today.
Can we ask him about Gajima?
One
Okay.
30-second answer.
Yeah.
Gajima, Robert Gumede, IT company. They look like they're kind of falling apart a little bit.
Yes. So I
Interesting.
guess 150 million rand rights issue. I guess this could be a point. We mentioned Supergroup. I mean, it kind of turned around from a massive capital injection, but there they again focused on the core and brought in a very experienced management team. So again, I'd need to see what you'd like to see some experienced management come in to take over and take that business forward. They've also got a lot of sort of legacy contracts, legacy issues which they need to deal with. So that's why I'm sort of 50-50 on. If there were some positive developments, I think at 12 cents, it could offer potential. Yes, so that one has potential.